Hey looters! Today I want to talk about the Curse of Strahd module, so there will be spoilers, as I talk about a little place called Death House, and how you can use it as a perfect foreshadowing mechanism for the rest of your campaign that will make your players feel on edge and feel like you are a mastermind DM today on Flutes Loot. Before I begin, I am Flutes, and Opal is my wife, and together we made flutesloot.com, where we write articles about D&D 5th edition like this one, which you can find a link to in the description down below. That'll take you to all my notes on how foreshadowing can be done in Curse of Strahd. So check that out, bookmark flutesloot.com, and share it with your other Curse of Strahd DMs to see what they think. So if you've DM'd Curse of Strahd, you probably know that there's this optional place called Death House to get your players from level 1 to level 3 very quickly and just get them feeling that dread of the setting. Some people choose to skip Death House because they think it doesn't really fit. I'm hoping to show you that it fits very well. There's a lot of callbacks you can look to in Death House as the campaign goes along. We're like, oh wow, we were kind of shown the ending there at the beginning. Number 1, we have the mists. Death House gets enveloped by fog when the players are inside of it. And when they look outside, all they see is fog. And if they try to leave, the fog will try to kill them. So the Death House is keeping them there. What does that sound like? Barovia. It's surrounded by mist. If they try to leave, the mists will snuff the life out of them. And they have no choice but to proceed and try to find a way out. And it's not about geographically navigating out. It's about appeasing the house. You also need to appease Barovia or the Dark Powers or Strahd. All of them, there's a price that must be paid. And that brings me to the next point. One must die. In the basement of Death House, apparitions appear and chant, "One must die, one must die," demanding that the players make a sacrifice to the house, and if they do so, the house will calm down and let them leave. But if they do not, it will get all riled up, summon a mound, and chase them, and it becomes this big endeavor of them trying to escape the house as doors turn into jaws and fireplaces turn into gas bombs and all kinds of horrible things. Similarly, Curse of Strahd's going to kind of come to a point like that where Strahd gets sick of them and everything just starts trying to kill them, and it's hard to rest and everywhere feels kind of claustrophobic. But back to that one must die concept. Strahd is held in Barovia by the Dark Powers. He cannot leave, and there must always be a Lord of Barovia, causing misery and being miserable. So even when the players defeat Strahd, spoiler alert, he will return. Module is written. A lot of people don't like that ending, and they like to give some sort of way out. And often that comes down to a player or another character replacing Strahd. Someone who is perhaps evil or miserable has made a pact with the Dark Powers. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but either way, you can feed into this one must die concept very early on that you're not going to get out of here unless you leave someone behind. One must die could also be referring to Irina, Tatiana, over and over again being denied life and Strahd being denied her. The third thing that I want to talk about is children suffer most in Barovia. Death House's history is that of a family, and especially the children, going through hell. The children are left and they starve to death. There's a stillborn baby. Some people homebrew that the baby wasn't stillborn and was even sacrificed by the mad mother. There's so many different ways to play it, but the point is children suffer for the sins and monstrosities of adults. There are literal monsters as well as the monsters living within human beings themselves. There are so many examples in Curse of Strahd of children being victimized. The werewolves are that way. Old Bone Grinder is certainly that way. The burgomaster of Valaki's home is that way. The burgomaster in Kresk has lost all of his children. Mad Mary has lost her daughter to who knows what. We know what, but she doesn't know her daughter's gone and she just wails every night. And then there's Arabelle out on the lake. That stuff going on. Then there's Strahd himself in his infancy and the debate about whether Baba Lysaga instilled him with evil or enhanced whatever evil he had. So even at the very core of Curse of Strahd, there's children suffering. Strahd himself might even act like some sort of sick fatherly figure to the player characters. I did this because several of the player characters had strife with their parents in their backstory. So they kind of grappled with that through the horror of Strahd, dealing with their own daddy issues. Number 4, I kind of mentioned this earlier, is appealing to malevolent entities. Death House history is that of trying to obtain immortality and power from asking Strahd for help or making pacts with made up ritual books that they don't know were made up. But the dark powers are not made up, and they hear such horrible pleas. The player characters throughout the campaign, whether they're about to die and they have a vision, or they go to the Amber Temple, or they're just sleeping and they have some malevolent entity speak with them. There's so many ways that malevolent powers can be appealed to. It's almost like everyone can be a warlock in Curse of Strahd. And so in Durst Manor, you learn about a cult who is making appeals to greater powers than themselves. Similarly, the players might try to appeal to Strahd himself and not the malevolent powers from the Amber Temple. Players can see that those who seek these sorts of deals may find a degree of what they were looking for, but they will find misery as well, which again feeds into some other points I already made. Number 5, of course, there's the artwork and the imagery in Durst Manor. There's paintings and carvings that seem innocent at first, especially with children playing, that if you look closer, the children are running in fear of different monsters in the woods. There's wolves hanging about, and everything is just not quite as it seems, and there's danger everywhere. So the artwork can instill that in the players, to incentivize them to start looking for things later in the campaign, because there are details that make the campaign so much greater if they notice them, but also know that there is horror hiding behind every smile and happy moment. Number 6, I mentioned this a moment ago, cults. Death House involves a cult, and your players will encounter more cults later on. The Voctor cult, the Yesterhill Druids are certainly a cult. The werewolves themselves are a cult as well. There's no shortage of people in Barovia desperate for power and looking to greater malevolent beings, like I mentioned earlier, saying, "Notice me, Senpai." Number 7 is one of the best opportunities, and that's if the Death House is destroyed. The players may not realize it at first. Even though it's destroyed, it will rebuild itself. It'll be back. It might take a few weeks, or at least a few days, but it'll be back. What does that sound like? If you destroy Strahd, rules as written, he will be back in a few weeks. He's not allowed to leave, just like the Death House cannot be put down forever. Number 8, a few quick points. The house itself, Death House, kind of echoes the architecture of Ravenloft. There's 4 main floors, and then there's 2 basement levels. Ravenloft has the underground Larders of Ill Omen and then the Catacombs, 2 levels underground, and then 4 main levels up above, with some levels going higher into the towers, but those don't matter so much. And so there is a bit of an echo there. Also, Death House in the children's room has a model of the house in its entirety, including its secret doors, which reveals all the secret doors to the players. That reminds me of the Amber Temple having a model of Castle Ravenloft. These 2 homes, Castle Ravenloft, Death House, both have models of them somewhere that reveal their secrets. Kind of interesting. And also the Death House is a great way to say this is a dangerous module with dangerous creatures, and we're not necessarily going to have it sugar-coated and tailored to the party. So be careful with your choices, players, because this is a dangerous module with a lot of tough monsters out there just ready to take you out. Next up, I think we're on number 9 or something, is Deceptive Armor. There's a suit of living armor in the Durst Manor that likes to push people off the balcony. And it's a trope, that the armor comes to life, and almost certainly because it is there, the players will suspect it. So don't use it right away. Wait till they think it's fine and one of them goes wandering past it. This feeds into Strahd's armor later on that I love to have the players come across and think it's this great armor that they can wear, not knowing it is cursed, it is Strahd's. Then when they go to fight Strahd, the armor comes to life with sentience and paralyzes whatever character is wearing it, bowing down to Strahd. And all of a sudden, the tank, the toughest character in your party, becomes useless. And that can really freak them out if they're fighting against Strahd himself. So just like this armor teaches you to not trust armor in Death House, you should not trust every suit of armor you come across in Barovia. Number 10, there's a dead adventurer who was seeking treasure and was killed by a trap. There are similar situations of people whose corpses are found in the module who left some sort of item behind at Yesterhill or in the Ravenloft Chapel. That all starts at Death House when there is someone who opened a chest and got hit with a poison dart, and there they sit. Number 10, 11, 12, I don't know what we're on anymore. Handwriting and phrasing is a good thing to see because there are several reveals in Curse of Strahd, like Vasili's true identity, that can be discovered by reading notes very carefully, noticing handwriting, and noticing phrases. I really love how Strahd uses in his letter to the Dursts the phrase like, "You are worms in my earth." I think it would be really cool for the players to find that letter, note that phrase, and then later when they're talking to Vasili, hear him say something very similar about how everyone in Vallaki just feels like worms in Strahd's earth. And if they're paying attention, they will notice that he used that same phrase. And if they figure out his identity because of that, your players will love that you have paid that attention to detail. Of course, they can also find the Wachter House letter and see it being about Vasily and having the same handwriting as Strahd. So that's kind of the built-in way, but you can see other ways of phrases and the way Strahd talks and writes. A little bit about the mound in the basement and how I made it a blood elemental and how that can echo an encounter of Vampire at the end. So I made a blood elemental in the basement, but you can do whatever, blood creature, whatever. I called it a blood elemental. And then Vampire can be made out of blood itself as the Lord of Vampires at the end of the campaign if you want to add that in. That would be a great parallel that you might make your players go, wow. There's a few other details such as the Den of Wolves foreshadowing dire wolves of Strahd, as well as werewolves, and so it puts the players on edge even though they're just stuffed wolves. There's also the tiger skin rug in Durst Manor that seems very interesting. Tigers are not native to Barovia, so it's quite the thing to find there. But there is going to be a saber-toothed tiger in the module, so it could kind of be fun to make a big deal out of that tiger rug and make the players a little nervous about it, like it's going to come to life. Then they find a tiger later, and it might just echo with them. That could be a fun detail for you as a DM. The music room could also be the start of unsettling music. There is the conservatory in Durst Manor, where there's a piano and a harp. Perhaps they play themselves until the players enter, and they go silent. After all, Strahd's going to play the organ later. In the Abbey of St. Markovia, they're going to hear violin music. And so there's plenty of places where they can hear music, and if they hear it, you can kind of set it up in their mind early on that that's a bad sign, that something eerie is going on. Last for this video, I want to talk about the trinkets in the basement right before they go into the Shandling Mound sacrificial room. There's a bunch of alcoves with places you could put little trinkets that foreshadow things that'll happen in the campaign. Here's some examples of what you could put there, and your players might pocket it if they're hoarders thinking it'll be useful later. I did this and it's really paid off just this last week. The item I used was a piece of amber with some sort of dark sliver stuck in it. One of the players has a big plot point with his backstory that keeps pointing him to the Amber Temple. They just found out they can possibly use a spell like Find the Path to get to the temple. If he has something from the place he's trying to get and he has that piece of amber, and he's really happy that he kept that so that he could use it right now. Stuff like that will really wow your players and make them feel rewarded for paying attention and latching on to those little items. You could also do a jar of pickled toads to foreshadow all the toads in Old Bone Grinder and the nature of the women there. You can do a feather that's as long as the player characters are tall to foreshadow the massive rock bird of Mount Gacchus. A wolf's jawbone for the werewolves, which, by the way, there are some silvered weapons available in Durst Manor. Make sure that they see those and that they're a little paranoid to not take them with them. You can have an effigy doll shaped like a man, like the very large one that will be at Yester Hill. You can foreshadow the Order of the Ravens being killed by Baba Lysaga by having a broken raven's egg. If you want to do a little bit more with that amber piece that I mentioned, you could have an actual like vampire bat stuck in amber to foreshadow the reveal that Strahd has made a deal with Vampire of the Amber Temple. You can foreshadow the Dragon of Argynfostholt by finding like a decapitated albino iguana carcass. And anything else you can come up with. There's so many things that are interesting in Curse of Strahd that just put a little item to just tease those here, and insightful, observant players will love you for it. So those are my main ideas of how Death House can enhance your Curse of Strahd experience and make your players really excited for what comes after Death House, and how it can teach them some valuable lessons that will carry them through to the end of the campaign. And the only thing is you need to remind them along the way of things they learned in Durst Manor and how it echoes what's happening later on. Maybe something's happening and they're trying to figure something out. You have them do an insight roll, or you just tell them, this reminds you of in the haunted house you were in when this happened, echoing almost like it's the same thing. And the players will go, oh, those sorts of things you just need to be aware of, because you as the DM will remember, but players, if you're playing weekly or even more seldom, they might not remember those details because they have lives. So bring it back to them, and that'll show what a mindful, prepared DM you are. That's all the suggestions I have for now. If you want to escape this YouTube video and get out of the mists alive, subscribe to this channel, because I plan on creating some more Ravenloft content, going over all the different locations in the Curse of Strahd and how I ran ran it for several different campaigns. I just enjoyed it so much that I want to do some sort of recap, and I don't have the skill of some other YouTubers who do full recaps and animations and stuff like that. So I'll just try to give some information and some tips while kind of recapping how my players handled those situations. So stay tuned for those. Until next time, this is Flutes saying be careful out there, all you Barovians, and have some fun. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.